I talk, you listen. Welcome to my one-man panel of madness. Alright everybody, this is Dr. Geohu, and I have a new theory. And this has been bothering me for the last few days that The Fugitive of the Judoon aired. And it's principally having to do with the TARDIS. Okay, yes, I'm that kind of geek. Hello, I'm Dr. Geohu. Think about it. Okay, so here's my thing. Everyone's kind of up in arms about, wait a second, if this Dr. Ruth, which is what I kind of call her, is a previous cycle, let's say, of the Doctor, right? Before the first Doctor, or who we consider to be the first Doctor, as played by William Hartnell, then how is it that she has a TARDIS when, according to the show and basically canon, the Doctor essentially received the name TARDIS from Susan? Now, she does say it. Now, there's a few times that the Doctor says it was, that he came up with the name TARDIS. And in one story, I think Susan had told her grandfather even before that, right? And that the TARDIS remained the TARDIS because of a misadventure, right? Back in the 60s. Now, I was trying to find information on where exactly the TARDIS decided to stay, looking like a police box. And obviously, in An Unearthly Child, the TARDIS is in a junkyard, and the chameleon, I think, circuit is working at the time, and so it looks like a police box. But in the next episode, when they go millions of years back into the caveman era, it's stuck. It's still a police box. Okay, so here it goes. And if you've not seen the episode, okay, it's a spoiler. But here's what I think. All right, so my theory is that Dr. Ruth is the Doctor, not from a parallel universe, but from the Doctor's timeline. And like I've mentioned before, she is going to become the first Doctor in a new cycle of regenerations with amnesia. It's happened before. The Time Lords have made the Doctor forget how to even operate the TARDIS, the third Doctor. So he couldn't take off, right? Now, of course, they kind of, there were some things damaged with the TARDIS, but he said the codes or whatever to make the TARDIS function were removed from him. So if her entire memories of a previous life before being a man were completely stripped from her mind, she wouldn't remember. But now she's remembering because she's had contact with her previous incarnation. I always think this is why the TARDIS threw her off. At the end of Twice Upon a Time, the TARDIS was like, oh, crap. Okay, it's like Total Recall, to kind of mix different sci-fi shows and movies. So she's having Total Recall. Things are starting to come back, and they don't want that to happen. And so the Master knows that there's a secret being kept from her, kept from everybody, okay? So let's say, for an instance, she is the timeless child, which, I mean, we know she's the timeless child because they refer to her as a timeless child in the Ghost Monument, those creatures from Desolation. So, how is it then, to my point, that the Doctor has a TARDIS, okay, before being given the TARDIS or pointed to that TARDIS by Clara, right, okay, in the name of the Doctor, in the beginning, he tells the Doctor to take that TARDIS. The navigation's a bit knackered, but you'll have more fun, right? So how can all this be if Dr. Ruth already has a TARDIS that looks like the police box and is using the name TARDIS? Simple. Here it goes. Stay with me. All of that happens to get the Doctor to connect again with the TARDIS. So, Dr. Ruth and whatever line of female doctors there was prior to the first Doctor, who we know as the first Doctor, the older man, who we don't know. I mean, obviously we know I don't think he was old when he regenerated. Maybe he was. Maybe he was like 12 and was already regenerated into this older, cranky man. Because you notice he is cranky. It's almost like they wanted to strip the Doctor away from all the things that made him who the Doctor was at the time. So, it's almost like the universe trying to connect the Doctor with his old friend, the TARDIS. And somehow Susan is compelled to reintroduce the name TARDIS. But like Susan is in on it in a way. I feel like Susan is somehow involved in the whole charade, you know, and you know, then she's claiming that she came up with the initials TARDIS when in reality it was the Doctor. So here's the thing. The Doctor has a TARDIS. It is a police box. And for whatever reason, maybe this Dr. Ruth picked that, right? Because it was something that she liked from Earth. Again, going back to Earth. Then, when she is stripped away of all her memories, forced to regenerate, they take the TARDIS out of her mind. They remove the idea from her mind, placing this knackered TARDIS, as Clara says, the navigational systems are knackered or whatever, into a repair bay, right? So Clara has to point to that TARDIS, which has already been the Doctor's TARDIS. Okay, you see what I'm saying here? So, okay, it's kind of hard, it's wibbly wobbly, but in other words, Dr. Ruth's TARDIS is the TARDIS, is the Doctor's TARDIS. At some point, I don't know how they're going to do this, but I feel they're going to go back, way back, to a point where the Doctor had a TARDIS. The Doctor had already been going through time and space for maybe even eons prior to that. That the female line of Doctors already had a TARDIS that looked like a police box. Okay? I'm not really sure, and I have to dig deep, but I'm not really sure where exactly they say that the TARDIS the TARDIS chameleon circuit broke. But what if it never broke? What if that's just what the TARDIS has always been? A police box, but the chameleon circuit is quote unquote broken to keep the original view or the original design that the female Doctors had for the TARDIS. So really what I'm talking about here is that the Doctor's reintroduced to the same TARDIS he had as a she before the Time Lords kind of removed all these ideas from the Doctor, because they knew, one, that the Doctor was the timeless child, two, that the Doctor is a hybrid. Okay, we can still work with this whole hybrid idea that somehow the Doctor is not half human or half Time Lord, that the hybrid is more than that the hybrid is actually a creation of the Time Lords, and they went, oops, did we go a little too far? Which can also mean that the timeless child is also the other. So, you know, Razalon, and this will kind of work with what the Seventh Doctor said in one of his stories, that the Seventh Doctor, Razalon, and Omega had worked together on all these different things. Razalon and Omega make a Doctor, make a timeless child of Gallifrey to do something with regards, maybe it was some kind of experiment with regards to regeneration, which went awry. And somehow now the Doctor is actually part of the time vortex, perhaps, and the Doctor really doesn't regenerate. Doesn't only have a limited number of regenerations, but has endless regenerations, hence timeless. All this other stuff that the Time Lords had been doing from the very early onset of the series, whether it's Brain of Morbius, whether it's Razalon, pointing the glove at the 12th Doctor, asking him, how many regenerations do we grant you? Hey, in reality, he kind of knows. I'm timeless, and, in the name of the Doctor's like, oh, this is it. It's my last regeneration. And at the end, climactic ending, of course, the sky rips open with the tear, and the regeneration energy goes into the 11th Doctor, and he becomes, he starts to regenerate. But it might not necessarily mean that he wasn't going to regenerate, but to keep the illusion, they send the energy to strike the next cycle of regeneration. So I know this is a lot to take in, but I think that that's the only way you can explain that this Doctor has a TARDIS that now, when you look back at the show previously, the Doctor says the idea that he stole her. But again, she claims, I stole you. Okay? So that means that the TARDIS probably already knew the Doctor. The TARDIS did choose the Doctor because the TARDIS knew the Doctor already. It was his TARDIS all along. They're just reuniting. See? And Susan coming up with the TARDIS thing, hey, and that could even work because he has amnesia. He doesn't know. So Susan could have easily said, Grandfather, it's a TARDIS, time and relative dimensions in space. Sorry, that was a terrible Susan Foreman. No, that was bad. We should just completely delete that. But anyways, that is my idea. That is what I'm going with, and I think that is exactly how we're going to see this play out. That the Doctor always had that TARDIS. The Doctor reunited with the TARDIS. That's why he always said, I chose you. And then, of course, it works that Clara, being there for the Doctor all the time, had to make sure that he reunited with his old friend, the TARDIS that he had always had from the very beginning. Okay? And everything else has been just, like the Master says, a lie, a charade, to keep the Doctor from remembering the past. Now, again, this leads me to believe that the Doctor has done something so bad, so terrible, that the Time Lords not only forced her to regenerate, but took away her TARDIS, and also any memory of what had happened, what's done. Which, again, it just makes sense, and it's just too perfect of coincidence that in Twice Upon a Time, when the Doctor regenerates and becomes female, the TARDIS has a shit fit. Sorry, that's all I can figure. That's all I can say. It just has a fit and throws her out. And I think it's because it's going, uh-oh, she's remembering. So it's kind of like if they can do that with a chameleon arc, where you can't even remember, right? If the chameleon arc can make you forget that you're even a Time Lord, imagine what they could do with something even more sinister, with some device that completely wipes out an entire series of lives that you don't even remember. Because people are saying this is a parallel universe, this is from another world, another realm, whatever, great. But too many of the facts are pointing to that this is the Doctor. This Dr. Ruth is the Doctor prior to the first Doctor as we know it. And something, again, if you look, she's a little bit more kind of high and mighty, so something had to have happened, and they forced her to regenerate as a man, maybe an older man. And we've never seen anybody else from the Doctor's quote unquote family. So what if Susan really is a plant? The Time Lords put this girl in his mind, saying that they're family, when in reality the Doctor has no family because the Doctor's timeless, and Susan becomes really an agent, maybe is an agent of the Time Lords to keep the Doctor on the straight and narrow. I mean, this just makes amazing sense to me. That's what I think it is. I don't know if it's true or not. We'll have to see. We still have 5 more episodes to go of Doctor Who, and so tell me what you think of this theory. I mean, let me know. All right, I think that's enough brain cells for this morning. So, talk to you again.